All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our market update with the Jason Smith Showcase team, otherwise known as the Showcase Miami team, here with Keller Williams Capital. I'd like to introduce you to Jason Garcia on the team and Zyrel Villacorte. They're both valued team members here on our team. So they're in the trenches with me, seeing what's going on in the real estate market, the residential real estate market, that is, of Miami. We focus primarily on the eastern part of Miami, Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, Pinecrest, South Miami, Brickell, Palmetto Bay area. So if we can ever be of assistance, that is the area that we really serve the most. So I guess the first thing to talk about, market update. What are we seeing out there in the market? We know, what do we know? We know that there's been a 40% appreciation over the last 2 years nationally in home prices. That's big news. That's been all over the media. 15% of that was in 2020. 25% of that appreciation was in 2021. So prices have gone up. That's historical. We haven't seen that type of appreciation. Not even in 2001 to 2007 did we see that. So that's number one. Number two, there's some conjecture that homes are overpriced right now as a result of that. What I'd like to do right now, if we could, is show this chart. If you can show that chart right there with home prices since 1980 or so, Zyrel. Oh, let's see if I go ahead and give you access here. Go right ahead. So here we have home prices nationally in the United States from 1990 on the left, where it was 94,000 was the average price, over to 2022 projected prices coming up. But we have the data for 2021. And what we'll notice here is a 4% trend line of appreciation. Long-term average appreciation for US home prices is 4%. So from 90 to 2002, that's what it was, 4%. And then we saw the seller's market, the big boom that we had from 2002 to 2007, where it was appreciating nationally over 4%, quite a lot over. We had incredible years there where things were going up to 25% per year. Then we had the recession, the real estate recession, if you will, from 08, and the trend line of 4% continues. And at this point, whoever was buying properties between 08, but specifically 09 at the bottom, they were buying under that 4% trend line, so they were getting great values. And then in recent years, again, even in 2020, when the prices were increasing dramatically, that 15% nationally, it was still below the 4% trend line, which is interesting. Then now, finally, in 2021, with a 25% appreciation, we were above that 4% trend line, which is interesting. So, of course, the thought out there is, wow, interest rate hike, the big announcement, biggest interest rate hike in 40 years announced by the media in June, which was the case. And then we just had the Fed increase it yet again, 0.75%. So the thought is, okay, prices must come down. It's an understandable viewpoint. So what we're looking to do is just see what we're seeing out in the streets with our actual listings that are in the market here in Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, generally in the $1 to $2 million range, and see what we're seeing. Thanks for that very much for that slide, Zyrel. So we'll take it back. So now what I can do is I'll just see if there's any other information that I can share with you. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at trend graphics, which is the MLS in graph form. So let's say we got Brickell Avenue here. This is the downtown corridor, lots of high rises, the banking district. It's it's downtown, if you will, very sought after condos. So let's say these are the 3 zip codes for Brickell: 33129, 33130, 33131. If we were to say, let's say condo only, we could say any price you want. Jason Garcia, Zyrel, what price would you like me to put in there for Brickell so we can see what the market looks like?
How about around 800,000?
Okay, so 800 to what price?
To about 1.6.
Okay, so 800, it gives us 1.5 or 1.749. What would you like?
Let's do 1.749.
Okay, So 800 to 1749 condos in that Brickell area. What comes up? Show chart. What I suspect you'll see is that there's been a lot of new listings that came on the market after the June announcement of the Fed interest rate hike. Okay, the biggest one in 40 years. So let's see what happened. So June was the announcement, June of 2022, and there were 259 listings on the market that month, and then 269 the following month to 276 the following month after that. I wouldn't say that's a huge increase based on that result. So here it tells us, and just confirming that we got the right zip code, yes, that we've got condo only 800 to 1.749. So there are 276 listings in that zip code between those prices. And in August, recently passed, you had 37 of them were closed, they sold, and 27 additional went under contract. What's interesting is to compare that to what would have been the strongest seller advantage in recent months, which would be this month right here, which was March, traditionally a great month for condos in Miami. For what reason? The weather's great. You're at the peak of peak season. You've got people from all over the world here for the beautiful weather. No hurricanes going on at that time, right? You've got the tennis tournaments. You've got the boat show. You've got all kinds of events that are happening. Coconut Grove Art Festival is in February. So many buyers, supply and demand. The demand is the greatest in that month. And what are they buying? Typically, they're buying condo versus single family, these out-of-town buyers, they're looking for a second, third, fourth, or fifth home. So 180 listings then versus 276 today. And you had 74 versus 27 pending sales. So 3 times the amount of pending sales and more than double the amount of closings. So what we can do is we can see in terms of months of inventory, it's a really good way to find out what's going on buyer versus seller versus a neutral market at any one of these months. So if we click on months of inventory, and you establish that by simply dividing the amount of listings divided by the closings each month. So if we look here for condos between 800 and 1.6, I think you said 1.749, that is. Back in March, we had 2.3 months of inventory, meaning it would have taken 2.3 months to sell everything that was available on Brickell in that price range, which is pretty amazing, right? If nothing came on the market. Compare that to where we were in July, arguably the slowest month of the year to buy condos in Miami because it's hot. People are at different parts of the world. They might be in Europe traveling, but they're not necessarily coming to Miami if they've got other options, is the reasoning behind it. Therefore, you had 14.2 months of inventory in July. 6 months is a balanced market. If it's under 6 months of inventory, seller advantage. If it's over 6 months of inventory, buyer advantage. Very, very important. So here we can see that it was pretty much barely in the buyer advantage second half of 2021. Then it was neutral market. And then as we got into beginning of 2022 of this year, it really went into seller advantage. 2.3 months, seller advantage, prices were rising. Prices were rising at that month. And then all of a sudden, this is where you saw the Fed interest rate hike made a big impact. They announced it in June. So you went from 4.7 months of inventory to 14.2 months overnight. One has to believe that that was a result of the story that was announced, the Federal Reserve interest rate hike. So in this price point, it made a big difference. Interestingly, looks like a lot of buyers bought in July out of season, bringing it back down to more of a neutral market. So good, interesting. We have another seller who was looking to sell their property in Pinecrest, asking about 2.5. Pinecrest, great market, as you know, great schools. There's a lot of value in Pinecrest because of the schools. People want to be in Pinecrest because of the schools. Their goal was to sell their house at 2.5 and move up to something bigger. And his feeling is, as a buyer, that inventory that he's been waiting for hasn't come on the market. He thought that that interest rate hike would be, okay, we're going to see more stuff, more inventory for me to choose from as a buyer. He hasn't seen it happening. So let's see what he's seeing in the terms of the data. So let's go to single family only. No more condo. He's looking in the 3 million range. So let's say 2 to 3. And he's in the he's looking in Pinecrest. He's saying, Jason, I'm not seeing the inventory there. I thought I'd see more selection. What is he seeing? So he's seeing, again, July announcement. You're not seeing the increase in inventory here for sale in that 2 to 3 million in Pinecrest. As a matter of fact, you're seeing less in listings that hit the market in June, July, August. There were 20, 19, and 18 listings available. So what does that look like in terms of months of inventory over the last 14 months for 2 to 3 million in Pinecrest? So it's a seller advantage, right? It's less than 6 months, in August, July, June. It was even 1.5 months back in April. So despite the Fed interest rate hike, you have not seen a change in terms of buyer advantage for Pinecrest 2 to 3 million. Very interesting. So this just shows, right, guys, how local real estate is, right? You can't just say, oh, how's the market? Well, what neighborhood are we looking at? What price point are you looking at? What zip code are you looking at? This really shows that what a difference it makes. Any other, like Coral Gables, Coconut Grove? We had one at 3800. We have 2 listings, one at 3800 Charles and another one in Florida Avenue in West Grove. Interesting, Jason, that those have been sitting there idle, right? Those listings for about 3 months. As a showing agent on our team, you know exactly which ones you're showing. What has been the narrative with Charles and Florida? Have you been getting lots of showings on those 2, 3 months into it?
So the first 3 months, I think combined showings with those two properties have been about 3 to 4 people. And then in about the last 2 days, there's been at least 6 combined for both of those. It's just been something, and a couple offers sight unseen, which is out of nowhere. Just offers sight unseen, bunch of showing requests 3 months into the listing, it came out of nowhere.
Isn't that immense? It's amazing. It came out of nowhere for whatever reason. Markets just news store. You know what it could be? Forgive me for surmising here, but it could have something to do with the stock market. Because what I've seen, so the stock market's been going down. So all of a sudden, it seems like people are putting their money into these forgotten listings, these forgotten properties that have been sitting there that are possible flips or income rental properties. To me, if I were to guess why that's happening, that would be the reason. The way that the stock market has been performing with the Nasdaq and the Dow has been down year to date, 20 to 25%. So now, as we've seen this in the past. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2001, sometime around there. The choice is, do people put their money in the stock market or into real estate? And even though we have the interest rates going up, the offers that we're seeing on some of these properties from the investors on those 2 properties in particular, they're cash offers. They're not finance deals, so they're not really worrying about the interest rates on those 2. So that's an interesting narrative. We had another listing, unfortunately, that just expired that we had listed for 1.7 million, and I've never seen this in 20 years. You showed that about 100 times, correct?
Yeah, I would say over 100 times. About 30 people or about 20 people came to the open house, and then for at least 1 or 2 months, it was at least multiple showing requests every day. That was just nonstop. It was something I've never seen before either, like you said.
Yep. What we would have seen before June or several months ago, that would have translated to a bidding war, and it's selling for much over asking price. But my observation was that people, they thought, yes, it's a great house. We're not certain about the location, but we like the house and we'd like to make an offer on it, but we're not going to overpay for it because we're seeing all this information in the news about what we don't want to buy it and have the prices go down. Therefore, they were making offers at prices they were comfortable with, none of which met the seller's asking price. So that was fascinating to see so many showings, so many offers. yet that didn't necessarily translate into multiple offers or a full price offer, which makes this market and the narrative that's out there and the dynamics with the interest rates and the economy and all kinds of things, the stock market, just uncertainty, I think, is what we take away from that. Another one that comes to mind is we have one on Grove Street overlooking a park, beautiful property. We weren't sure if this property was going to get a builder buying on it or if it was going to be an end user that kept the property there because it's overlooking a park. Small home, 1,300 square feet on a 7,000 square foot lot. Zyrel, I don't suppose you got a photo of that by any chance. Do you, Grove Street?
Yeah, we do. I'm
Great.
gonna stop your
Thank you. Go right ahead. So this was an interesting property because we really didn't know. Sometimes you don't know if it's going to be an end user or a builder, right? But what we learned pretty quickly from this one, so here's Biarritz. This is so Grove Street is right there, the one in the middle. Yeah. So here, this is Grove Street. As you can see, it's a beautiful lot. It's got a charming little home on it. Very valuable land, not in a flood zone, overlooking the park. It ended up that the builders wanted the property, but they weren't willing. Again, their caution was, what will it be worth in 2 years when we've got a new home on this property? What will the value be? Will it still be $5 million as it has been in recent months? If so, yes, we can buy it for the purchase price. But in this case, they were coming in with lower offers than what an end user would offer. So it was a young couple that ended up buying this that was from the neighborhood, that they planned to make it their dream home. They were the ones that paid highest and best value. I'd like to point out that we had this at a higher price and weren't getting any action on it, any offers. As soon as we made a price reduction, we did have multiple offers came in, and we received an offer that was to seller's satisfaction, and it's under contract. Another example of how price sensitive property people are. Could you show that Biarritz one again, Zyrel? This is one that Jason was showing, Jason Garcia, over on Normandy Isle in the Miami Beach area. So they came on the market at 1.1, looking to see if they bought the property for about in the 300s a few years ago. So they had it listed at 1.1, and we weren't getting any traction, right, Jason?
At 1.1, I believe we had about 4 showings in a month or around there.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as we changed it, was it to 989?
Yes, exactly.
I had about 4 showings the next day, and then one of them submitted a full price cash offer, and we were under contract.
Again, showing how price sensitive buyers are in today's environment. It's not like they're not out there. It also speaks to being in the market versus on the market, right? You could have 3,000 listings on the MLS. They're on the MLS, they're on the market, but they're not in the market. The ones that will sell, what we see, are the ones that are priced to move, which might be about 25% of those available 3,000 listings, let's say. Those are the ones that are in the market where they're receiving offers and they will eventually sell. So I think it's such an important thing to talk about when we're talking about the market, what's going on and where to price it, etc. So interesting. And then we have one on Matilda. If we could show that one on Matilda, that's 2-story townhouse, Zyrel. This was one where an owner was selling it by owner, and it fell through about a week before the closing. So he was definitely looking to make sure that it sold. We took the listing at 1.5 million. It's in Coconut Grove. And again, Jason, as a showing agent, what kind of feedback were you getting at 1.5 when you showed it to the realtors and the buyer?
So pretty much I had an open house, and that was the only traction that people came, and it was a successful open house. I would say, again, 20 plus people, and all of them were just saying it needed too much work for that full 1.5 asking price.
Okay, so we then presented that information to the seller, and he reduced it to 1.4, 1.399 to be exact. And after we made that reduction, if I recall, there were 7 showings that weekend, and we had 2 or 3 offers competing against each other, ended up selling to the seller's satisfaction. And he was able to move into a house in Palmetto Bay with you that you bought him for about $1 million. And he was also competing against another buyer for that purchase, correct?
Yeah, that was just a funny story of how agents matter and technology matters. The house I ended up buying with him, they had a contract with another agent, but the other agent didn't know how to send the contract for initial to his buyer. And it was about a week of just them missing initials. And then I asked for a showing, and the agent said, look, we're pretty much under contract, but this guy's driving me nuts. He won't sign it. He doesn't know how. And my buyers need to move. Their kids start school in Atlanta in a month, and we need to get this done as soon as possible. And I said, perfect. My buyers are looking to move in as soon as possible. So it just shows technology. We got everything signed in minutes, and then we were under contract. We're able to win that deal.
Great job, Jason. Yeah, it does speak to speed to lead, just making things move quickly, especially in any market, right? But you made it happen. You put the offer in there, and the seller was happy. He closed multiple offers, and then he won in a multiple offer situation. This despite the narrative that the prices are coming down. And I think one thing that I know Francisco on our team, who's working with a lot of buyers, he's got a lot of buyers that are on the fence. Their concern is, wow, prices are only going to go down. I'm going to wait. And that's a valuable way of looking at it. We've seen that might work in the condos between 800 and 1.75 in Brickell, because it's a buyer's market with 14 months and then 7.5 months of inventory. Definition of a buyer's market, because it's over 6 months. That won't work based on the 3 to 4 months of inventory we're seeing in some of these different areas, like we just saw in Pinecrest, from 2 to 3 million, because that signifies price appreciation, because there's more buyers than there are sellers. I guess one thing that Francisco says is, yes, prices may come down, interest rates are going up. So if one waits, how much have they really gained if their payments keep going up because of the interest rate, unless they're buying cash, right? But if they're going to get financing, how much are they really saving by waiting as the interest rates go up? So it's something to factor in when you're making your purchase. Do you wait for prices that may or may not go down depending on the price point, or do you just lock in today's interest rates and go with what we have today and go from there? You must be coming across that a lot, Jason Garcia, with the buyers that you're working with. Do they ever give you any feedback?
Yeah, that's a big thing that I tell them. They always say, oh, the market's just so crazy right now, everything's so expensive. But